Let's now cross to Dave Keating for reactions from Brussels. Dave, what's on the table for this discussion this Monday?
Well, the EU foreign ministers are meeting virtually right now, and they are discussing how to respond to this. Obviously, if something happens to Navalny, it is a nightmare scenario for them. So they want to figure out some way to exert enough pressure on Russia to make sure that he stays well. Now, right now, they are meeting virtually, and that's going to be followed with a meeting with the Ukrainian foreign minister. Now, in parallel today, we have the so-called Normandy format happening. That's Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France. They are meeting also to try to figure out some kind of understanding, both for the Navalny case and for the buildup of troops on Ukraine's border. That is a separate issue, but it's turning very, very much related. Now, as the EU foreign ministers are discussing sanctions today, obviously the situation at the Ukrainian border is very much coloring their impressions. Now, we have a very, very wide range of opinions on this within the European Union. Poland right now is pushing very, very hard for tough sanctions on Russia, both on the Navalny issue and on the Ukrainian buildup issue. But then we have other countries, the usual suspects, Germany, Italy, Greece, who are far more cautious on this, and they want to wait to see how the situation plays out. But of course, you have those more hardline countries in Eastern Europe saying, particularly with the situation with Navalny, the EU really needs to take a tough stance right now because the situation is getting dangerous.
It's getting dangerous. How is all this, Dave, if you can tell us, impacting EU-Russia relations as we speak?
Well, those relations are obviously were not good to start with, but this is really turning into a crisis point, I think, for these relations, because the EU has said that, if anything happens to Navalny, the consequences will follow. And then in parallel, of course, we have this troop buildup at the Ukrainian border. And I've heard opinions on this really shift since last week from diplomats here in Brussels representing both EU countries and NATO countries. Last week, there was a kind of wait and see approach, but this week I'm starting to hear a lot more nervousness about what's happening on the border and what Putin's intentions are. And then, of course, in parallel, the situation with Navalny, obviously with these recent developments, I'm also hearing far more alarm about the Navalny situation this week, as this week begins, than I was hearing last week. So I think there is an increasing sense of urgency here. We will see what the foreign ministers come out with at the end of this meeting. It should be ending around 3 p.m. this afternoon. And basically, we will be watching for a renewed push for sanctions and the language. As ever, we will be parsing the language that these foreign ministers issue with their conclusions at the end of this summit. And also, we'll be closely watching the press conference with EU High Representative Josep Borrell.
Dave Keating, thank you so much for that update from Brussels.